High FM, 101.9 megahertz of life.
Recent developments have suggested that Donald Trump once again is trying diplomacy over immediate military escalation in Iran. So he says he's postponed the massive strike in order to have conversations. Iran not so sure about that. What on earth is going on here? And Elie Pieprz is joining us. He's the Director of International Affairs for Israel Defense and Security Forum. Elie, a very, very good morning to you. Hope you are well.
Good morning to you. And I think this conversation following after a discussion of Looney Tunes and general confusion maybe is a perfect segue.
Absolutely, because it is Looney Tunes.
I think that's what President Trump is trying to do. I don't know how much of it is specifically planned out, but I think that's now begun to be a very comfortable pattern for him, is creating a sense of confusion so that at least America's perceived enemies do not understand exactly what President Trump wants to do, which is really a radical change from the way foreign policy was actuated during the Cold War, where you want to make sure your adversaries know exactly what you want to do so that they will be scared and no one accidentally will press a red button and lead to a thermonuclear war. That's changed now. And I think that President Trump has seen the chaos that smaller, what he considers inferior military powers are able to achieve with a certain amount of chaos. And President Trump feels with a much stronger military, much greater capabilities, could create that same chaos as well and hopefully lead to results that will benefit the United States. Remains to be seen whether that ends up being the case, but I think that is certainly part of the plan. And sometimes for allies like Israel, it can get confusing. And we're sort of caught in between because I think the U.S. or President Trump wants to empower Israel to a certain extent and empower other allies in the Gulf to a certain extent. But I think his bigger concern, a bigger focus is to confuse and to throw off America's enemies, which is not just Iran. I think they're even looking at the countries that support Iran, largely China.
What's interesting to me, and I don't know how relevant it is or isn't, but we know that Netanyahu and Trump met last week. Then we have this whole weird strategy playing out. I can't help thinking or wondering if there is a greater design.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Trump have a very unique relationship. There is consistently, both of them have a media in their home countries that are focused on seeing their failures and expressing them and amplifying them. And I think that both Trump and primarily the Prime Minister have understood how to use those to their advantage. And twice, the media has created a perception of significant friction between the U.S. and Israel that allowed Israel to complete not one, but two surprise attacks on Iran. And I think at this point, Iran has become a little bit more wary about that. But still, there is a sense in the mainstream media that Trump and Netanyahu are at wit's end. There's about to be a major fallout. There's constant friction. And frankly, on both sides, probably more on the American side, there are certainly those who go off the record and leak information to media, which seem to be inclined to lead into that area. And I think certainly within the U.S., there appear to be many figures who don't like Israel, don't have Israel's best interests in mind, or at least are frustrated by how long this has taken and are lashing out at Israel a little bit. I don't think it reaches all the way up to the president, but there's no doubt that there is, within the State Department, there's not exactly one approach. And that's something that certainly Israel and Israel's allies in the Gulf have to be very cognizant of.
Every time and we've seen this pattern over and over again, the more aggressive Trump is on Truth Social or on Twitter, social media, the more we know the less likely there is a chance of there being a significant attack. This has been a pattern we've seen. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then he doesn't, and then he holds back, and then he says, somebody's asked me, they begged me not to attack. If we're seeing this pattern and finding it frustrating, Trump and his advisors have got to be aware of how it's being received. Given that, is this also a deliberate strategy, as you said in the beginning, to confuse the so-called experts and therefore confuse the enemy?
I think there is. I think that is a big part of the strategy. I think President Trump wants to be as much a part of the conflict, or as he sees the resolution of the conflict, as possible. He can order a strike. He's not actually a soldier on the field in the Gulf, pressing buttons or actually shooting anyone. But this kind of mayhem, he is actually running and doing all the activities. So I think this actually is much more comfortable for him. I think he is comfortable being in charge. And to the extent that the president has been very successful at creating a sense of a tornado around him, yet be able to be focused. And I think he's doing the same. He's creating a sense of tornado that others can't really operate in. But he seems to have his goal, I think he's still heading in a certain direction. But I think when it comes to the talk about, are there negotiations? Does he want negotiations? Does he not want the negotiations? I think the president always wants to have some sort of resolution, a diplomatic resolution. What I think has changed is that when he got a resolution that was so on one-sided in favor of the Iranians, a resolution that seems to have been led by Witkoff and Jared Kushner, that ended up being so one-sided towards the Iranians, the blowback in his own country was that the U.S. sold out, the U.S. is weak, and I think he now feels almost betrayed by that angle, and therefore the next go-around, when there is going to be some sort of negotiation, it will be much stronger. The starting point was the previous MOU, but it'll have to be much stronger, because I think President Trump did not welcome the chatter that this was a very, very weak deal and that Iran had schooled Trump on negotiations. That, I think, is his kryptonite. That, I think, is something he's very cognizant of. And I do think that it is something that has given him pause to trusting not just Jared and Witkoff in leading negotiations, but also Pakistan as a moderator. I mean, it was quite surprising when many saw Pakistan as a moderator, a country that has not recognized Israel, and it led them to an MOU that eventually President Trump felt it was not something that he wanted to keep, and it was violated. And I think even the Iranians understand that when the MOU and the agreement is so much in their favor, that President Trump is not going to stick to his word in their mind, and he's going to be violated. So it actually is not that valuable.
I kept thinking, I was just wondering if Iran received this news of there being negotiations with some bewilderment as well. But then we also know that Iran itself is very, very divided, and they're different elements. So it's perfectly possible that there is one sector of Iranian government or control having discussions that the other is just not even aware of.
That certainly is a distinct possibility. There is definitely a lot. It seems like there's different tracks. Obviously, the supreme leader hasn't been heard of since the war began back in February. So there definitely is reason to believe that there is a lack of unity. There's no free press. There's no expression of different ideas. So if there was a tremendous disunity and really starting fractures, it would be very difficult to see without having confidential information. And I would say I think that one of the keys is that as long as these negotiations are going on, there's a lot of focus on the military buildup. Is there going to be a military strike? For the most part, as far as I'm aware of, largely the economic stranglehold of Iran maintains. And as difficult as it is for the world to get oil and energy resources out of the Strait of Hormuz, it is also strangling Iran's ability to get payment for that. Now, I'm not saying that countries like Qatar and Turkey maybe aren't able to try to funnel some money into them, but that is definitely, was noticeable that when the Prime Minister Netanyahu met with President Trump, the three senior officials who were in the room sitting in a couch right next to President Trump were Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and not Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, but Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent.
Interesting. We do need to leave it there, unfortunately. That was Elie Pieprz, who is the Director of International Affairs for Israel Defense and Security Forum. Give me your reaction to that. Do you think that Trump is doing this deliberately? This, we're going to attack, no, we're not. Yes, we are, no, we're not. Is it deliberate, or is it just Trump?